there! What you're about to watch is a remake of a video that I uploaded exactly 1 year ago. And even though I do love the content of the video, the way I presented it was sloppy. It was literally just one audio track set to an image, and that's it. So obviously, I can do better. What you're gonna see is a recreation of that video with multiple unique renders for each chapter, sound effects to go with the story alongside the occasional music track, and even unique voice actors. Something which the previous one was desperately needing. So yeah, go downstairs, grab a beverage or snack of your choosing, and allow me to indulge you with all of the details of Junichiro's Exodus! Chapter 1, The Mysterious Building. Junichiro, for the longest time, was quite an unremarkable person. He blended in the background, didn't have too much to say, but he had a keen eye for detail. While others may pass by a building without a second thought, Junichiro would notice the smallest of changes, whether someone was moving out of a shop or was giving it a sort of rebranding and whatnot. He'd look at it and think, hey, I remember that changing. However, one day, this fun little quirk of his would come back to change his life forever. It started like any other day. Junichiro was walking down the street wearing his favorite apparel. A white cap with an explosion graphic on it. Nothing too flashy, but just enough to set him apart. As he walked, though, he noticed something strange. A building that had always been a charity shop was now a towering skyscraper with guards stationed everywhere. Junichiro looked up at the unfamiliar logo, a black shield with lettering he didn't understand. Perplexed, he asked some of the locals if they noticed the change, but everyone responded the same way.
What are you talking about? Nothing's changed, dude. The buildings always look like that.
Something was definitely off. Against his better judgment, Junichiro decided to investigate. Though the building was heavily guarded, the guards appeared to be bored. Not particularly vigilant either. When Junichiro managed to sneak inside, he climbed higher and higher through the skyscraper, encountering more and more things that he couldn't explain. By the time he reached the second highest floor, however, he saw a sign that read, The Vault, and that immediately caught his attention. Inside, the room was filled with bizarre objects. 7 crystals, each with a different colored glow, a sword that looked like it could slice through anything, but what really caught his eye was a yellow staff, adorned with an unknown green symbol, and a top hat with 3 identical symbols along its brim. Junichiro thought for a second. Either he could go home, live the rest of his life, and forget all of this, or he could make things a lot more interesting. Without hesitation, he punched through the glass display, grabbed both the staff and the hat, and immediately triggered an alarm. Suddenly, guards rushed in, brandishing strange weapons unlike anything Junichiro had ever seen. They were made of intricate, unfamiliar components when the guns he was used to just looked like black sticks and a puck. The guards themselves looked odd as well, lanky figures in pink bear suits. Before Junichiro could process what was happening, they started shooting. Instinctively, Junichiro would slam the staff to the ground and pray that it would protect him. To his amazement, money began pouring out, not in a useless fashion, but forming a barrier that reflected the guard's shots. The staff seemed to act on its own as well, creating walls to shield him while he wasn't even trying anything. Junichiro started to think that this staff had a mind of its own. The strange staff then led him to the top floor, where there was nothing but a strange black core. The moment Junichiro jumped into the air and touched it, against his own will, it disappeared. It didn't feel any different, but the staff stopped moving. Then, without warning, due to the momentum, he got launched out of the window from the top floor. Frantically, Junichiro held onto the staff, trying to figure out what to do as he plummeted towards the ground. He slammed his staff down, hoping for a miracle, and it worked. His fall was cushioned. Dazed but unharmed, Junichiro stood up and looked back. But the skyscraper and all its men had gone. In its place stood the charity shop, just as it had always been. No one else seemed to notice anything unusual that happened. But Junichiro still had the staff and hat. He looked down at the staff, then back at the building, and then back at the staff again. A distant, thoughtful expression came over his face. Now, this is where things get interesting. Chapter 2: Planetary Confusion. In the months that followed, Junichiro would never be the same. He began buying eccentric clothing like shutter shades to make himself stand out even more. He dyed his legs pure white, and in his boldest move, he went for an operation to replace his torso with solid gold. This wasn't an easy operation either, as his species had one strict rule. If their head is separated from a suitable torso for even a second, they black out and die instantly. It was a delicate process, but eventually it succeeded. Junichiro's torso was now made of gold. For the next few months, he continued to experiment with the staff. He discovered more and more about its powers, like how it could be used as a lasso for creating platforms in mid-air, allowing him to essentially fly. One day, while Junichiro was browsing through some information, he discovered something strange. A planet that had appeared 1,000 miles away from his home just a few months ago. No one knew what was on it, and no astronauts had bothered to explore it. However, since his species didn't need oxygen to breathe, Junichiro took it upon himself to be the one to investigate. He grabbed a ragged bag, slung it over his back, and began flying away from his home, heading towards this mysterious planet. A few days later, he arrived, landing in a field. It was a rough landing, so Junichiro needed a bit to get back to his usual instincts. However, when he did, he noticed that the place he landed at looked awfully familiar, as this wasn't just any ordinary field, but an exact replica of one from his own town. Once he gathered his thoughts, he walked to where the corner shop should have been, and sure enough, his hat and staff were lying on the ground, just as they had always been before. Junichiro paused as he tried to pick them up again, but the second he touched them, he'd get an electric shock. Junichiro didn't entirely know what this meant, but it only added to the mystery further. He continued walking, and after about 5 miles, the world around him would abruptly change. The familiar landscape around him gave way to cherry blossom trees and traditional Japanese houses. It was only then that Junichiro realized what this planet was. A patchwork of different places and moments in time, all crammed together into a single world. Shockingly, it also contained everything that could grant people power. A thought then struck Junichiro. A thought which would stick with him for the rest of his life. If someone who can't rule the world because they lack the right tools came here and found something powerful just laying on the floor, they could easily take it and then return to their home, and then their world, or even the entire universe, would be doomed. He then realized his new purpose: to travel to every single place like this, collect anything that could be used for extreme power, whether it be crystals, swords, or anything else, and store them in his bag to ensure that they would never fall into the wrong hands. Was this good? Was this bad? Junichiro didn't know yet, but it was something he could do. And so, Junichiro began his mission to try and locate any powerful artifacts that may be laying on the ground, in a ditch, in a box, basically anything that he could find which didn't have a host. Now this is where things start to get complicated. Within the timelines where this event occurs, there are only 3 possible outcomes. The first split timeline is an unfortunate one. Junichiro finds a strange orb lying on the ground, and he curiously picks it up and holds it near his head. Without warning, a blast shoots through his skull, incinerating him instantly. It was a harsh reminder of how dangerous this place could be. And with that, there are only 2 remaining universes where Junichiro survived up until this point. In both of those, he continues his search for artifacts. We'll focus on one of those universes for now, but when another split occurs, I'll let you know. Chapter 3. Going Louder. Another month passed as Junichiro was knee-deep into his search, working silently to avoid drawing attention to himself. He didn't want enemies chasing him for the things he was taking for the greater good. But one day, he saw a leaflet, and then a broadcast on TV, announcing that 7 objects called the fusion crystals had gone missing. A bounty had been placed on them by the planet's ruler. When Junichiro saw this, he would look down and sigh to himself. Fantastic! Now there are going to be droves of people looking for these MacGuffins. That makes my job so much more fun! About 5 minutes later, while he was walking around, Junichiro bumped into a really short figure.
Hey, watch it.
They briefly looked at each other, locking eyes for a moment. And here is where the universe split. We won't explore what happens in the other universe just yet, but trust me, it's important. So keep this moment pinned in your mind. Junichiro continued looking at the small figure in front of him, which resembled a robot with a brain mounted on wheels. After a few seconds, Junichiro said to himself, he probably doesn't have the same interests as me, and would then walk off to continue his search. Junichiro then thought to himself that because of the bounty that was placed on the artifacts, there would be more people searching for them than ever. And he already had a pretty large bag at this point, so he figured, alright, I'll find one more and then I'll probably head home. In his search, he discovered a temple. And this wasn't just there for display either. It seemed genuine. Given that these worlds were copies of others as well, what could be inside there were either A, riches beyond his comprehension, which should be hard to impressive with considering that, or B, a weapon beyond his understanding. Junichiro ruminated and then decided, okay, if I want to loot almost everything on this planet, I might as well check this place as well. I can't leave any stones unturned. He stepped inside and almost immediately stepped onto a trap, getting pelted by arrows. Curiously, the arrows aimed directly at his chest, but instead of killing him by piercing through him, they bounced off, harmlessly. Junichiro would then very quickly realize that his gold torso that he only acquired for aesthetic purposes was probably far more useful than he initially thought. There were a few more traps, but he managed to intercept them using the staff. For instance, when a boulder came rushing down a tunnel, simple, he'd created barriers of money to stop it from rolling towards him. After navigating several of these obstacles, he came upon a rising platform that revealed a book. Books, while not as flashy as swords or crystals, were still a very common way for people to hold secret powers. Curious, Junichiro approached, but before he could reach the book, he noticed that there was someone else in the room. The figure resembled him, and was clearly of the same species. He wore a dark black suit with a red bow tie, he had a mustache with the thickness of a shoelace, and he topped it all off with a top hat emblazoned with a coffin symbol.
Hey, what are you doing here? Have you traveled all this way just to be a thorn in my side?
Well, why would you be so inclined to trudge through a temple like this to take this book in particular? Junichiro would say with a raised eyebrow. The man then smirked and said,
Well, if I told you, there'd probably be some sort of mass hysteria. So, how about we avoid any unnecessary fights? Let me grab this book, which I assure you has no importance whatsoever, and I'll be on my merry way.
While saying this, the man reached out to take the book, But before he could, Junichiro spun his staff, creating a lasso that wrapped around the book and flicked it into his hands. With a cocky grin, Junichiro would look back and say, "You know why I'm here? It's to stop artifacts like these falling into the nefarious hands of people like you. And you're not getting it back." Junichiro would then place a money wall and start running off. He didn't see any counterattacks from the man, with the exception of what seemed like a spear going through the wall. And the spear was very well thrown, as it went straight for his head and pierced his left eye. Junichiro would writhe in pain for about a second before pulling out the spear and running off, making more money walls to make sure he couldn't burst his way through. From the other side of the wall, Junichiro heard the man shout something.
You think that's a challenge? Oh, just you wait. One day, I'll strike. You won't even see it coming, and
Junichiro would shrug this off, assuming that it's an empty threat, and exited the temple. He ruminated about how heavy the bag had become, and thought that it was time to head back. And so, he slotted the staff into his back, and took flight once more. The journey back took about a month, as finding all of these items weren't easy. After another week of traveling, Junichiro finally arrived home. He sat down and thought to himself, "Alright, I've got all this stuff, so now what do I do with it?" He realized that protecting all of these artifacts on his own was next to impossible. He needed assistance. So after getting the wound in his eye checked out by making an eye patch, he then began reaching out to a few people he thought might be able to help him. Unfortunately, most people just thought Junichiro was completely off his rockers. I mean, who would dedicate their life to finding a bunch of powerful artifacts just to preserve them? Well, everyone except for one. Someone who didn't even sign up for the mission, but still managed to find their way to Junichiro regardless. Chapter 4. Welcome Home. One day, as Junichiro sat down contemplating what to do with all the powerful artifacts he gathered, there was a knock at the door. He got up to answer it, and found someone who looked somewhat familiar to him. This person had a green torso, and wore a blank golden cap.
Oh, wait. Hold on. This isn't the right door. I was supposed to talk to someone next door. Can I, leave?
Before he could slip away, Junichiro interjected. Wait, hold on. Before you go, you might have seen something in the newsletter about someone collecting powerful items to keep them from falling into the wrong hands. Do you have any particular skills? The stranger hesitated, and then, after thinking for a few seconds, replied.
Well, I'm in a hurry myself, but if you must know, I'm pretty good at building things out of materials that most people would dismiss. Would that help you at all?
Junichiro's eyes lit up. Well, I'm no mechanic, but I bet that could definitely be useful.
You know what? You've piqued my interest, but I'll finish my business next door first. I'll get back to you after. Bye.
With that, he hurriedly shut the door behind him, leaving Junichiro to wonder about what the stranger's potential could truly be. For a few hours, this encounter lingered in his mind. Suddenly, the door opened once again, this time without a knock. Someone had just casually strolled in. Junichiro's heart would momentarily skip a beat before he realized it was the man from earlier. This time, the man wasn't empty-handed. Not even close. He was holding what looked like the end of a wind-up toy. Except it spun on its own whenever he pressed a button, meaning that it never needed to be manually charged.
I didn't have anything better to do. My current workplace pretty much just brought me into that meeting just to berate me.
The stranger casually said. A smile beamed across Junichiro's face. I've been looking for a mechanic like you! You're in! Oh, by the way, what's your name? The man stopped to think.
I don't really have a name. Never been given one, and oddly enough, no one's ever asked for it.
Junichiro would then raise an eyebrow. Oh, well, that's strange. Our species doesn't really make a big deal out of names, but I figured you'd at least have something. So, how about I give you one? The stranger blinked with a surprised glare.
You know what? That sounds pretty nice. What exactly do you have in mind?
Junichiro would then think for a second. How about Maverick? It's got a good ring to it. What do you think?
You got a good point with the whole ringing thing. Maverick it is.
With that settled, Junichiro got some much-needed rest. When he woke up a morning later and went downstairs, he was taken aback by what he saw. In the middle of the room stood a fully constructed exoskeleton. It had a golden fedora, a sleek black suit, and electricity radiating from his arms. Maverick looked up, pleased with himself.
Turns out I finished this quicker than I thought.
Junichiro then walked over, inspecting this creation. What is this? It looks like an entire person made out of... Hold on. He tapped the exoskeleton and realized it was made entirely out of wire. Yet somehow it looked convincingly like plastic. Junichiro was taken aback. You know what? He said, turning to Maverick. You might be the real deal. How many more of those can you make?
I've got enough materials to make about 5 more exoskeletons, but I haven't figured out how to make a brain yet.
Junichiro scratched his chin, then shook his staff, summoning some money into his hands. You know what? If I could find someone to replace my torso with solid gold through surgery, we could probably pay someone who knows how to create an artificial brain. You'll have to come back to me on that, but we could probably turn this into something special. Chapter 5. Looking for Power. Shortly after they met up and made the exoskeleton for the toy soldier, they would soon enough figure out how to wire a brain to it. Well, not a real brain, but more so an artificial one. As of now, the details on how they did it aren't important. But shortly after this, Junichiro, Maverick, and the toy soldiers would become an unstoppable trio. For years, they would venture from planet to planet with only one goal: to make sure that Junichiro's ambition was carried out forevermore. Collecting artifact after artifact, crystal after crystal, sword after sword. Sure, more and more people were adding the pair to their wanted list, but it seemed like nothing could catch them. Even in their darkest hours, these artifacts were in good hands. Fast forward a couple of years, and the group had undergone some changes. 3 toy soldiers were now in active duty, with the reason being because of how straightforward they were to recreate given the correct resources. Made out of wires, they harnessed electricity generated by the wind-up key on their backs, making them not only faster, but also capable of delivering some deadly strikes. They could even communicate with each other at lightning speed through sine waves, giving them an upper hand in terms of strategy whenever they were in a pinch, as they could tell each other exactly what to do and what not to do on the fly. For about a year, Maverick had also been working on a portal with the potential to bring them to other realms. The only real issue was to do with its power source. To complete the portal, they needed a material called Trident, a gem-like substance of unknown origins that only existed on their planet. There were only 2 known Trident sources. One of them was already in use, sustaining half of the population with life-supporting energy. This energy was crucial due to a particular birth defect. Around 50% of the planet's inhabitants were born with a condition that required this kind of life support in order to survive. Without it, the air around them acted like a deadly toxin. The only thing preventing mass extinction was a beacon in the middle of the town, powered by the first Trident that's been found. Fortunately, neither Junichiro nor Maverick needed it to survive. However, many did, so touching the existing Trident was out of the question. However, rumors persisted that another piece of Trident might be hidden in a nearby cave, because most people couldn't survive exposure to it. No one had ever confirmed its existence, but Junichiro, Maverick, and the toy soldiers, unaffected by the dangers, saw it as their mission to investigate. Armed with their confidence and their mechanical allies, the 5 of them ventured onwards. The first few minutes didn't yield any results, filled only with the echoes of their footsteps. Then they reached a part where 2 paths revealed themselves instead of just one. Junichiro sent 2 of the toy soldiers down the secondary route, while he, Maverick, and 1 soldier took the other. After several more minutes of walking, they heard something. A faint mechanical sound, like machinery reeling in something. They exchanged glances, but pressed forward. And then, they found it. encased in an unyielding invisible barrier, was the Trident. Despite their best efforts, they couldn't break or move this barrier. "I don't like how we're not getting any hints from this barrier," Junichiro would mutter. Maverick would also add something onto this by saying,
I could have gotten an idea for what was causing it if it was even visible, but alas, that's not an option.
Before they could devise a plan, something rather unexpected would occur. A note would slide out of one of the cracks in the stone walls around them. It floated down, almost as if it had a mind of its own, and Maverick picked it up. When he picked it up, it simply said, "Junichiro should have listened." They were both puzzled by this, as after years of their own journeys, this didn't faze them at all. Assuming the toy soldiers would rendezvous with them in due time, they decided to head home to write a plan on how to break this barrier. However, hours later, despite them being signaled by their emergency pages, there was nothing. Junichiro and Maverick tried to pay this anomaly less attention and pushed it to the back of their minds. They could always just find the materials to make more toy soldiers, but there was still this burning thought in the back of their head that they tried to repress. What happened down on that other path? Who left that note? Should one of us walk down with the other toy soldiers to make sure something like this wouldn't happen? And most of all, what even happened to the toy soldiers? On his way back, Maverick had also picked up something from the cave's walls.
The hell?
It was a sword perfectly nestled in a rock. It had a ruby embedded on the hilt and seemed ancient. Without much thought, Maverick had taken it, intrigued by its design. Once they returned home, he tested it by slicing open a few sandbags, and to his sheer amazement, the blade sliced through them as though they were bubbles.
Finally, something I can actually wield.
Still not entirely convinced, however, Maverick asked one of the remaining toy soldiers to fetch something heavier for a more robust test. The soldier left, and Maverick sat down to wait. A minute passed. Then 15. After an hour of silence, Maverick began to grow uneasy again. The toy soldier had a built-in radio for communication stuffed into a pager, but there had been no contact for nearly 15 minutes! He exchanged a worried glance with Junichiro. It had been years since they didn't have any toy soldiers to assist them. And now, when they had the most questions, they were alone. Only the two of them remained. Chapter 6. Missing Mechs. Junichiro wanted answers as to what the hell was even going on, because it's far from normal for 3 robots which are programmed to specifically follow them and help them and have the ability to conduct electricity for things and yada yada and whatnot. It wasn't normal for them to just casually disappear like that. So he went into a room which was made for writing and ruminating. It was a simple room, just a desk, some cupboards, a window, and a tin of pencils. He stretched out his arm to start writing, but just before he could, he felt something through the wall. Something that was tugging at his arm, and it would then pull him a little bit further. He then looked over and noticed some weird-looking slot, which looked like it was made for paper. Junichiro tried to pull his arm out of it, but he couldn't exactly do it. He was going to shout for Maverick to help, but then he heard something. Some sort of rustling in the cupboards behind him. So he tilted his head back, and what he saw was someone was in there. He saw a familiar symbol on a top hat. And just like that, Junichiro's heart stopped as he realized who was in the cupboard.
Remember me, Junichiro?
The door then slammed open to reveal the same person who gave those frightening words to Junichiro years ago. The man he still didn't know the name of. Junichiro would somewhat sassily look back and go, "Oh, what? Your plan was to pin me all along? To lock my arm inside of a suction thingy so you can come in and do some blows?" He then looked over to the other end of the table where he put his staff. "Yeah, sorry buddy, but I'm one step ahead of..." When he looked over, his staff was gone. In a frantic worry, he looked all over to try and find it, and then looked up to see that the man didn't just have a grip on it, but was actively floating it.
And don't even think about using this to try and worm your way out. So, now that I've got your attention, I've been attentively watching a lot of your little adventures over the years, and I've been thinking while watching on these sidelines, what would be the best way to strike at you? But you know what they say, it's better to show and not to tell.
While he's doing that, a very faint beeping sound can be heard from the man's pockets. It's not the main thing he wanted to show Junichiro, but he took a note of it. The man would then pull out a set of physical pictures that he took. Junichiro didn't know what these were, as he was still somewhat focused on trying to get his hand out of the thing that was tugging at him. Junichiro saw the pictures, and his heart lodged into his throat. He saw the picture of two of the robots getting drawn into a giant laminator, which would then encase them into a piece of paper where a man would then stuff them into the underside of his coat.
And that's not all. Take a look at what's in the other pocket.
He showed a couple more physical pictures, and they showed images of the paper being hung on walls as a display piece, specifically for him to look at. After a couple more pictures of him posing in front of them, he would then say,
You know what? There's one more which you might know.
The man would then take out a larger picture, showing something much, much larger than the regular pieces. The moment Junichiro saw it, he immediately started panicking even more, as the picture itself was an empty frame of gold. Every single attempt that Junichiro would make to try and shove his arm out would be futile, and this would cause the man to walk back and chuckle.
Oh, my old pal Junichiro. I have something very special prepared for you,
he said as he walked back to the cupboard. He would then open a secret cabinet within the cupboard, which was specifically made while Junichiro was outside. And this would cause Junichiro's thoughts to go from a natural sense of primordial fear to flat-out insanity. What was revealed to him was an entire elaborate freezing machine where rather than freezing them in ice, it would encase whatever it covered in gold, making Junichiro completely unable to use any of his senses. The man looked back at the machine and then back at Junichiro, who was frantically begging for mercy and trying to pull his arm out, and all he could say was,
I think it's about time you joined the others, don't you?
All while this was happening, Maverick was still working on the portal, but he was alerted by Junichiro's screams of terror.
What the actual hell is even going on in there?
He ran to the door which led to the writing room, but found that it wasn't just locked, it was sealed shut. So he ran back to the room he was in before and grabbed the sword, trying to break very small pieces of the door. But because of how heavily it was sealed, he could barely even get through it. Before long, he then heard the screams silenced. No other words came out of that room for a solid 10 seconds. He then heard the man say, from across the room,
And now, for anyone else that's left, I suppose I can leave my underling to those. For now, we get home and celebrate.
Maverick didn't say a word, but in his head, he was internally screaming. If he didn't act fast, it might be the end of everything that they have fought for. Chapter 7. Maverick's Last Gambit.
Shit.
Maverick didn't know what happened to Junichiro, but he knew that he was the last one left, and he only had one chance to be able to bring this all back. While working on the portal, he was also working on a tracking device, which didn't just need a small sensor, but would also put on a display of where they are in the world, showing the amount of footsteps they took, where they turned back, where they may be, and anything related to that, just so he could see where everyone is. He then ended up getting a glimpse of the man walking away with a massive golden block. Maverick then breathed to himself and did a throw towards one of the pockets.
Okay, calm down. 1, 2, 3!
And it landed. Because of the pressure he was feeling from moving the gold block as well, the man didn't notice. Maverick stood behind the door and drew a sigh of relief. But then he had a thought. If that tracking device is discovered, then either the man or his underling would know what's going on and head directly back to his house, considering that they know Maverick's the only one left. So Maverick went back to work on the portal, as well as writing a letter for if anyone else were to show up. If he could get that portal to activate, which he only needed some of the trident in the caves to do, then he'd be able to actually get some help. Maverick was working on the portal, piecing everything together in his head. This thing needed a power source to run. The only thing that was powerful enough to run a portal like this is the trident. But the only trident he could easily reach was keeping half of the population alive, and the other one was being held up by a border he didn't know how to get through. Hopefully, he could figure out how to break through it. Throughout all of this, he worked on some of the smaller details about the portal, writing down a note in case anyone were to arrive, as I said before. And then he noticed something on the display. Whoever was walking forward had stopped walking. He very carefully looked at the display for about 15 seconds.
No.
And the dot that indicated where the tracking device was started heading back. He'd been found out!
I knew it! I'm not waiting any longer! I need that fucking trident!
He knew that they discovered the tracking device, and he only had one option left. He rushed out of the house and headed straight for the center of the city, pulling out the trident. It was the only option he had if he wanted to make sure he could still stay alive, even if he had to sacrifice half of the population to do it. After all, what were they giving him in return? As he headed home, he noticed people stepping out of their houses and slowly melting, seeing the trident that Maverick took, and then cursing him to hell. Maverick hurried back, trying to find the slot where he had to put the power source in, struggling because there wasn't any obvious place to insert it. And then, he heard a knock at the door, and he looked at the display. The tracking device was at the door. Maverick was silent. He knew that whatever was behind that door would kill him if he ever showed his face. So very quietly, he picked up his sword, slowly paced towards the door, and then did a lunging stab and a pull. And he pulled out someone's arm. His own arm!
But how did my...
He was shocked. He had no idea how it pulled out his own arm. Then the door slowly opened to reveal a figure coated in red, with two pauldrons on his shoulders, both with spikes, a shadowed head with outlining where his face was, and a sign that he was wielding which simply said, "Deny."
Who the hell are you? And why are you so hellbent on hunting us?
Maverick tried to strike him again, but he ended up hitting the sign, and his other hand came clean off. It was then that Maverick realized that whatever hit that sign reflected back at whoever hit it.
You're a demon!
Maverick frantically ran back to the portal, shoved his head into the trident so he could push it in, and then reached over to hit the button.
Okay, I've got the portal. Now I just need to...
But then the second he face planted over the button, he couldn't lift his head. He didn't know why, but he just couldn't. And then he blacked out, with his brain not having another thought, as the mysterious creature shoved the spiked pauldron into his skull, making Maverick's body drop onto the floor, dead. Now, for the mysterious figure, he only had one goal left. He only needed to find the bag where Junichiro was holding everything. And with that, the mysterious creature would walk off. So is this where the story ends? No. Because if you remember something I said earlier, there's one more timeline that we forgot to talk about. So, let's bring it back a couple of years to when Junichiro met that robotic figure on the bridge. Chapter 8. Changing Fate. God, I haven't seen anyone in a while, and now that people are widely looking for some random crystals, this is gonna be a lot more messy. Just gotta wait for someone to show up. Oh!
Hey, watch it.
Apologies. Junichiro would then walk past for about a second, and then he looked back. Wait a minute, are you looking for those crystals? You seem to be in a rush.
Well, yes, obviously.
Well, now you have my attention. Have you seen any leads so far?
You see how much they're giving for finding one?
Yeah, well, that doesn't really matter for me, though, Junichiro would say as he takes out a staff. Junichiro shakes it a bit and some money comes out as he catches it. Because I'm set for all I need. The robot would then step forward.
Hey, Egghead. How about you and me team up?
Well, I've got my own goal that involves looking for them, so we could benefit from each other.
Those crystals seem to hold a lot of untapped power to their names, and I'm looking to put them to good use.
Junichiro then briefly takes note of him prioritizing the power. His thoughts on him are neutral so far, not knowing if his goals are malicious or not, but he lets it roll because it might be dangerous if it's left alone. I'll follow for now.
Fair enough. Anyway, the name's Folly.
Junichiro's mine. I'm not from around here, but there's a reason I've come. I'll tell you why if you're curious, but it's a long story.
Curiosity is a waste of time. Anyway, let's look for those nerdy crystals or whatever.
Alright then, what do you suggest we look? Folly would simply shrug. Alright, we'll keep going until we found something. Actually, quick question. Do you work for anyone? You seem like the kind of guy that would be in some sort of group. Folly seems to be perplexed by his question. Wait, no, actually, let me rephrase that question. Are you a leader of sorts? Folly nods his head. Maybe you have some subordinates that could help us find them. We're going to be more powerful with numbers after all. Maybe you've already sent your guys out to look for the place, so asking would be redundant.
I would love to send my minions out to help find the crystals, but they'd probably get lost. Well, maybe except for one, maybe. But I'd rather not risk it. I lost too many minions to them trying to find lost quarters.
Oh, well, if you want, I know how to get around the place faster. It's gonna be a little weird, though.
Well, that's fine by me. I've gone around in weirder ways.
Junichiro then takes out his staff and flings it towards Folly, making a money lesson.
So, how does a
Junichiro reels it back, wraps it around Folly, and then puts it on his back. He then glides into the air using the money as platforms to walk in air. He then brings himself higher so he can get a better view. Oh, and don't worry about me probably not being able to keep the pressure behind my back. My torso is made of solid gold, so I'll be fine. Junichiro would fly for about 5 minutes until he saw a bright light on the ground. And that's the ticket! He lands onto the ground and unravels Folly. You good after that? He's silent. Folly is completely disoriented after the flight and needs some time to readjust. Yeah, I think next time I'll only go for that when it's dire. Though on the bright side, there is a bright light over there in the distance. I'll head there first and see what it is. Stay here until you're focused again. Junichiro would then walk off into the distance and look into the illuminated pit. That seems like what we're looking for. Junichiro then takes out a lasso and pulls up what he thinks is a crystal. It takes him a few tries, but eventually he gets it. And then Junichiro has a thought. Because he doesn't know how much he can trust Folly. So should I even tell him that I found anything? Or is he gonna try and double-cross me? After thinking for a moment, Junichiro gets an idea. He looks into a bag for a substitute, finding a dud crystal, which didn't do anything. He was going to pretend that he found something, when in reality, he was showing him the dud crystal. This'll work. Doesn't seem too dangerous. Alright, let's do this. Chapter 9. Gangrene Revelations.
Oh, you're back.
Yeah, I'm back. So, I don't think this is the crystal we're looking for, but it does seem fair. Before Junichiro could finish, Folly would snatch it out of his hands and smirk. Should we, head back to your place to report that we might have found something good? Folly would then nod. Alright then, you're the leader. Folly would then proceed to jump off of a cliff into a graveyard. Junichiro looked down and then leaped after him, seemingly falling, but stopping his fall with some money. When Junichiro landed and looked around, something fell off about the surroundings. But Folly reassured him by welcoming him.
Welcome to the base of Folly, home of the Gangrenes.
I guess that works? But wait, your group is called the Gangrenes?
Yeah, that could probably be interpreted as something, but I don't know. Sit on a gravestone rock or whatever.
Junichiro felt a little less confident, but he didn't make any complete decisions yet. He sat down on one of the gravestones with a little hesitancy, and would then look up to see a dinosaur and a possessed rock walking around. Junichiro then pointed at them and said, "Wait, Are these your guys?
Why, yes. And there's more.
Go on.
Well, there's Mal, Reginald, the Godfrey, blah 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 blah. Michael, Delilah, Johnny.
Seems like you've got quite the arsenal.
Oh, and I can't wait to show you Doug.
Doug?
He's my red herring. I mean, secret weapon.
Junichiro's eyes would then widen for about a second, as if he's remembering something he didn't want to remember. Right. Oh, I have a question, by the way. Earlier you told me that the crystals might be powerful. My guess is that you're in this for the cash reward?
Well, yes, but I don't think you get the full context.
So tell me, why are you guys looking for this stuff? Because, like, if it's the cash reward you're looking for, the existence of me kind of undermines that, you know?
Well, these gems might be unrivaled in strength, you know? Maybe even more powerful when I bring some of these guys to life.
Junichiro was thinking about what that could potentially mean. It seems like he wants them for the sake of the crystals themselves and not for the money. Exactly what he feared. But Junichiro didn't point out that he wasn't agreeing with Folly. At least not yet. Then Folly would ask for Junichiro if he wanted to tour around the machine.
And this is how we bring the dead back to life. And even objects as well.
Junichiro then had a random thought, because he seems to be mentioning the dead a lot. Folly would then proceed to pour acid all over a gravestone. He stepped back, and it started growing arms, eyes, and multiple extinct plants. Impressive. So your goal is to bring back the dead? Folly would then give another sly nod. Interesting goal, I suppose, Junichiro muttered, getting a strange vibe. Though it wasn't enough for him to jump the ship just yet. Junichiro then heard radioactive noises coming from one of Folly's henchmen. That doesn't seem healthy.
Why would it be healthy?
Well, I suppose that is more fitting, considering these guys were dead not too long ago. So, what do the emeralds have to do with the plan to bring people back from the dead?
Maybe, just maybe, I can make one giant body, an amalgamation of everyone at once. I'll be unstoppable.
Junichiro was getting more and more uneasy. This guy isn't as neutral as he thought. Maybe now is when he should jump the ship. Well, I'm not exactly too sure what the ruby I gave you can do. Should we test it? Folly nods once more. Alright then, I'll let you figure this one out. Heh, have the crystal.
Boss? The crystal looks
Fantastic.
Yeah. I figured it would be. Junichiro then heard some distant screaming in the background.
Doug, shut up! Oh, ignore the scream. That's just Doug. Doug wasn't dead when we revived him, so he sort of became mutated.
After handing him the crystal, Folly didn't say anything, but he started glowing a strange green aura. Junichiro finally snapped. Okay, he's definitely evil, and I have the feeling that I need to leave with the crystal. Unfortunately enough, Junichiro had a plan. Impressive! Hey, do you mind if I take a closer look at it? He asked, walking closer to Folly.
Oh, yes, take a look.
Alright then. Junichiro grabbed hold of the crystal and looked at it. He was staring at it, not saying anything, not reacting, just standing there. It went on for about 2 minutes, and it started becoming concerning. At the same time, Folly heard the sound of scribbling above a hill. This was all starting to become weirder by the second. Folly thought for a moment, and he spoke up.
So, are you gonna put it back in now?
Junichiro still wasn't moving, as the scribbling sounds grew louder and heavier. Then, one of Folly's minions walked up, got suspicious, and poked Junichiro. All of a sudden, both Junichiro and the crystal fell apart, not into multiple pieces, but into a pile of perfectly stacked and colored money. The money toppled apart from the big pile, and that also happened to be the crystal.
Huh? Eh?
Then out of nowhere, a note appeared from the sky. Folly grabbed it, and the note read, "Okay, so I put some time into it, and I do not like where this is going. I'll gladly be taking that crystal back. Also, that wasn't actually the crystal I found, but rather a fake I used to hide what the glowing crystal might have been. My main goal here is to take every cloned item on this planet, bring it to my home planet, and dispose of it. And I don't trust anyone in the world to have them. If you have a problem with that, you can say it to my face. Kind regards, Junichiro. P.S. You might want to look up. Foley looked up and saw a massive bundle of money wrapped around something obscured by a cliff. Suddenly, Junichiro walked over the edge, looked down, holding a button. Hey, Foley! They say money doesn't talk, but it sure can hurt! He then pressed the button. Adios! A big batch unraveled, and all of a sudden, a bundle of razor-sharp money fell directly onto the graveyard, causing multiple cuts for most of the people there. Junichiro then took off into the sky. Foley would simply stay still and give a glare to a certain someone. He would then give a one-eyed glare to Doug. And Doug knew exactly what that meant. As clear as a sunrise. Chapter 10. On the Run. Junichiro flew for a solid 15 minutes, trying to get as far away from the Gangrene base as possible. Well, that went better than I thought. He grinned to himself, thinking back to his escape. Didn't know the money clone was that convincing. His thoughts were interrupted when he noticed something ahead, however. Hey, wait, is that another light? Junichiro squinted at what he thought was another crystal, gleaming in the distance. Without hesitation, he headed towards the source. The light was coming from a pipe. As he'd done before, Junichiro used his lasso to catch it, reeling it up with anticipation. When he finally saw what he caught, it was actually another crystal! Seems like the journey's on my side after all. With a satisfied smirk, he pocketed the crystal and continued down the sandy path. As he walked, faint echoes cooed in the distance, but he shrugged them off, assuming that they were just the wind. After all, he was still unfamiliar with this general area. A fence then came into view, leading to a deserted town. What the... I don't remember this place. Didn't it get attacked by a sandstorm or something? He walked forward, now staring at a completely decrepit town center. Whoa, this town does not look like it's in the best shape. Junichiro, distracted by his surroundings, turned around at the sound of clicking noises behind him. Maybe I should just turn back. As he glanced over his shoulder, his heart skipped a beat. Two pairs of robotic claws were coming straight at him. Instinctively, he slammed his staff onto the ground, conjuring a wall of money to block the attack. Following him the entire time was Doug. Doug grabbed the money wall with his claws tearing into it. Junichiro's breath quickened. His fight-or-flight instincts were palpable. Doug's claw scraped a piece of the wall, revealing a part of Junichiro's arm. A clue that Doug may have actually grabbed him. Was this actually Junichiro? Doug thought for a moment, and then violently ripped the wall in half, unwilling to trust his initial suspicion. Junichiro, meanwhile, had taken cover behind a nearby door. A piece of his arm still missing from the claw's attack, he peeked through down the crack, hoping that Doug had lost interest. But Doug didn't buy it. Damn it. Junichiro cursed under his breath. I guess I'll have to face this thing head on! He poked his staff from behind the door, hoping to either cut through Doug's hand or at least stun him. But Doug could only make unsettling sounds in response. Junichiro's breathing grew heavier. The sight of Doug was triggering a memory deep inside of him that he didn't even know he had. Fear gripped onto his back. No! I'm not doing this! Doug let out a screech as he charged through the wall, but Junichiro was already gone. He had fled deeper into the village, ducking into one of the crumbling houses. His mind raced as he hid, trying to think of a way to escape this relentless foe. But Doug wasn't done yet. A blood trail in the air and on the ground hinted that Junichiro was still in the town. And Doug wasn't about to give up the hunt. Inside the house, Junichiro hurriedly tried patching up his injured arm with strips of money, hoping he could take flight without Doug detecting him. 10 minutes passed. Surely, Doug must have moved on by now. Junichiro could finally breathe a sigh of relief. At least for now, as he was safe. But he knew better than to linger around. If he stayed anywhere near the deserted town, Doug would find him. With a cautious glance over his shoulder, Junichiro took flight once again. This time, he flew for 3 straight hours, crossing over countless places that he swore he would come back to loot later. His focus was on the distance. He had to get as far from that base and from Doug as possible. Finally, completely exhausted, he landed in what seemed to be a cold, deserted nighttime festival where there was no one around. Okay, Junichiro muttered to himself. Surely, now that I've disabled their only way of getting here and gotten so far away that they can't detect me, surely now I can take a damn breather! But little did he know, the Gangrenes work fast. The moment he ran off with the crystal, they started making fake newspapers with pictures of Junichiro trying to paint him as a monster through bad public reception. And unfortunately for Junichiro, it worked a little bit too well. Chapter 11. The Bounty Hunter. Wow, Junichiro muttered to himself, gazing across the eerie festival grounds. The more I look at this place, the more ominous and deserted it seems. Maybe I should go a little bit more on the run. He glanced upwards, noticing something disturbing. A green ship was descending from the sky. Oh, and speak of the devil, that doesn't look very inviting. Junichiro narrowed his eyes. Well, I do still have one trick for scenarios like this, he murmured, standing still and thinking about his next move as the ominous ship landed. Then a voice broke the silence.
Smart move. I would have expected someone as greedy as you to try and steal that chip.
Junichiro didn't budge as the voice continued.
You have 2 options. Either you come with me, or I kill you. It's as simple as that.
Still, Junichiro didn't turn to face the speaker. His lack of response felt almost taunting. But then, from a higher wall, a faint scribbling sound echoed in the air, adding to the tension.
Very well,
the voice replied. A blaster rifle clicked, its barrel aimed directly at Junichiro's head. The person wielding it wore a dark green jacket and matching pants. They also donned what seemed to be a camp ranger's top hat and countless small-scale gadgets hidden underneath his coat.
Give me that staff of yours, and I'll let you go.
Still not a peep from Junichiro. The scribbling above grew louder and more frantic, raising suspicion in the hunter's mind. He glanced up, only to see what he thought was Junichiro crumble apart, revealing yet another clever decoy. It was a pile of money perfectly colored to mimic Junichiro, tumbling down as a letter fluttered from above. From the rooftop, the real Junichiro looked down and took off to the sky, staff in hand. You know, for the record, I expected that to last a lot longer, Junichiro called out mid-flight. The ranger, ignoring the scattered money, snatched the note from the air. He engaged his jetpack, lowering his rangefinder and letting the blaster rest to his side. Finally, someone who can actually keep up with me in the air, Junichiro mused as he dove towards the ground, facing the ranger. You know, I'm not 100% sure why you're chasing me, Junichiro called out. But you might want to read that note. As the ranger hovered in the air, he opened the note, scanning its contents. To cut to the chase, I'm not doing this just so I can rob stuff. This planet is a cloned amalgamation of other universes, and scattered across it are weapons, crystals, swords, things that could give people endless power if wielded. I'm here because I don't trust anyone else to find these and rule the world with them. My goal is to take these back to my home planet and dispose of them so no one can ever use them. The handwriting grew messier, as if written with a haste. And if you have a problem with that, well, you can... The note abruptly cuts off where the decoy had collapsed. Junichiro, still flying, called out, So, what's in this for you? The ranger stayed silent, and after a few moments, breaks the silence with confidence in his voice.
I don't see why you'd need to know. After all you know is theft. So why should I give you insight on my mission on a silver platter?
He then raised an arm and pressed a button on his gauntlet. Without warning, a pair of missiles launched from his jetpack, homing on Junichiro. So that's how you want to talk, huh? Junichiro muttered, quickly flinging his staff forward. A ball of money launched into the air, colliding with the missiles and causing them to explode mid-flight. You're a cut-to-the-chase kind of guy, I see. Junichiro hovered in the air, shrugging. Well, okay, if it's a chase you want, it's a chase you'll get! With a sharp motion, Junichiro slammed his staff down, summoning a massive wall of money between them. The ranger, momentarily blinded, flew up to try and get a better view. But Junichiro wasn't idle behind the wall. He pulled a lever, and suddenly a barrage of lasso-like rope shots flew out from the wall, all lunging towards the ranger at once. The ranger dodged expertly, his jetpack carrying him out of reach, but the ropes kept thrashing wildly from the earlier rocket explosions. Ready to retaliate, the ranger drew his rifle, firing a burst of shots in Junichiro's direction. None of them would end up hitting his chest. Junichiro ran for a brief second before flipping into a handstand, pressing the tip of his staff to the ground. Well then, if that's how you want to fight, then I guess we'll have to clear out the airspace! The staff started spinning faster, small bits of money swirling around before spiraling upwards. The speed increased until the flying money formed a vortex, forcing the ranger to act fast. The ranger fired at the airborne money, trying to clear a path, but was forced to land to avoid getting caught in the whirlwind. From the ground, he fired precise, three-shot bursts from his blaster. Using the momentum of the spinning vortex, Junichiro slid across the ground, deflecting shots with his staff. The ranger's shots bounced harmlessly off the money wall. With one final push, Junichiro propelled himself off the platform, soaring back into the sky. This time, he anchored a string of money to the edge of the platform, creating an intricate trap. Well, if direct attacks won't work, it's time for me to use some other trick! Chapter 12, The Bastion. All of a sudden, what sounds like some sort of sonic boom echoes throughout the sky, as the shape of someone with the stature of a golem flies by with the speed of a jet. Junichiro is thrown off by this while trying to make distance from the ranger, but it doesn't deter him. Brilliant, I guess that bounty that got sent to him was also sent around to some others. Hopefully that's the end of it though. The ranger continues firing for a while, but then takes off in the air to follow Junichiro. Lowering his rangefinder, he aims a gauntlet and then fires a cable out of it, which wraps around one of Junichiro's legs. As the cable grabs him, Junichiro turns to the ranger. Funny, I had the same idea. He pulls a string attached to the two he was using to fly, and they all unravel at once, wrapping the ranger's leg and making him half immobile to mirror Junichiro. Now they're both laying on the ground, thinking about how to outsmart each other when all of a sudden, they hear a voice from the air. They can see the figure clearly now, circling back to the two as its hands switch out with blades made from some unknown superpowered material. It halts its flight, descending towards both of them.
So, there you've got a hell of a bounty. Something about fusion emeralds?
Junichiro then points at the figure floating above him. I knew it wasn't just him. The ranger quickly opens a pouch, taking out a small pocket knife and cuts his legs free, readying his rifle. He gets up and looks at Junichiro, who's pointing towards the sky. Standing still for a second, Junichiro tries to repeat the same trick with the money clone he did earlier. This time, he uses it to get out of the rope by falling out of an obscured tree, hidden from view. The figure looks around and says,
Something tells me this will be one hell of a hassle.
The ranger steps forward.
The bounty's mine. Unless you'd like to work something out, if you help me, I can give you a cut of the pay.
The figure looks at the ranger.
Sounds good. I'll scan for any nearby life forms. As long as we haven't gotten more than a few miles away, we'll find them soon.
Junichiro, after falling out of the tree, says, I had a feeling you'd try something underhanded with your tactics. The ranger looks forward.
Underhanded? I prefer efficient.
Junichiro smirks. The figure then looks at Junichiro.
True, but I don't kill people that do nothing to me, so I have a proposal. You'll hand me those fusion emeralds to keep safe and to study within the Bastion, and I'll walk away and let you do whatever.
Junichiro, curious about the so-called Bastion, looks up. Tell me, who might this Bastion be?
That's classified information. The most I'll tell you is that we make sure nothing falls into the wrong hands.
Junichiro laughs. Ironic, I've actually got a similar goal to you. I'm only here to loot all this stuff because this planet is an unnatural clone of multiple worlds and universes. All of these powerful things are just laying around without a host. Imagine if some kind of evil space tyrant came here and found, I don't know, a sword that can overwrite reality? Just sitting there. That's what I'm here to prevent, to try and find every cloned item and artifact here without a host, to then return it to my home planet and dispose of it. I don't trust separate minds to follow the same goal.
Well, me personally, I wouldn't dispose of it. Maybe disposing isn't the correct word, more like locking it away. But don't get me wrong, we'd still put powerful objects under heavy protection. One of our main motivations, though, is that knowledge is power. And frankly, there's a lot to learn from those relics you carry.
You've piqued my interest, Junichiro says. I'll make you a deal, but on 3 conditions.
Alright.
1, you show me this operation of yours so I can get an idea of what I'm putting my findings into.
I can work with that.
2, you don't double-cross me. If I don't agree with what's happening behind the scenes, or you try and pull any sinister schemes, I'm out.
Fine by me.
And lastly, and most importantly, I keep the staff. It's the reason I got this far, and without it, I don't really have anything except for my solid gold torso, and that can only get you so far.
Sure. So, with that out of the way, I suppose we have a deal.
The figure replies. Right, you have yourself a deal. Show me exactly where you reside. As this conversation unfolds, the ranger, who's been listening quietly, suddenly receives a transmission. His focus shifts back to Junichiro.
You got lucky this time. If a better job hadn't come up, you'd be dead where you stand.
The ranger then flies off, heading back to his ship and departing. Chapter 13. Classified Information. Junichiro held on to the person who gave him all this info. Oh, by the way, what's your name?
Oh, you can just call me Shep. That'd make things simple.
Is Shep short for shepherd?
No, it's just Shep.
Alright then, seems simple enough. There was then a sudden, bright flash of light that blinded Junichiro. When his vision returned, he found himself at the entrance of a futuristic fortress. Junichiro was pretty impressed. Ooh, fancy, he commented.
Not meant to be fancy, but okay. Follow me. You'll have quite a lot to see.
As they walked through the halls of the outpost, Junichiro was shown many experiments from different rooms. Chemical tests, tests on random powerful artifacts from across the planet, physics tests, robotic encoding experimentations, even portals to alternate timelines, albeit with all of them seeming to be failing.
As you can see, the Bastion is an intergalactic organization dedicated to finding out and preserving everything. The relics of the timelines, the names and faces and biologies of every single creature across the universe. Everything. You can find it here. Although I will admit, not absolutely everything in here is 100% accurate. I'm the only one that holds all the really accurate knowledge in the database, which can only be edited at HQ.
I'm guessing these are all from things that you've recovered?
Yep, and this is just from this planet alone. There are galaxies out there that are completely unexplored, and we plan to find them and research everything from under the cover of our advanced stealth technology.
So I'm guessing this is a much bigger operation than I thought.
As I said, we're dedicated to logging everything that can be seen, so as not to let it go to waste. They say a man only truly dies when his name is uttered the last time. You can't really say the same for everything else here, no.
Junichiro was getting a far better sense of trust from Shep than he ever did with Volley. Well, you've earned my trust. Let me think about how we can both benefit from each other. Junichiro thought about how he got into the bounty in the first place. Okay, so you said that there was a lot of money on this if I were to be caught. Where did you end up hearing this?
My assistant picked up on the news.
News? News of a bounty? To what degree?
It might have spread across the entirety of the planet.
Who was the person who first called this bounty?
Don't think I've checked, actually. I got too hyped up on the account of cash prizes apparently being replaced with your staff. I won't take it, though.
Yeah, thank God. I can tell now that the truth between us is more well known.
Yes. Also, now that I think about it, I don't even think that letter had a name.
Letter? Junichiro then started putting the pieces together. So wait, if you were only told via letter, How did Mr. Planet-hopping intergalactic bounty hunter McGee get word so fast?
Who? The Ranger? I don't know, he must have been on the planet at the time.
I doubt it. I saw his ship as it was going down, and it seemed like he was unfamiliar with the terrain. That looked like a foreigner to me. And if that means what I think it means, that means word spread of me being here has gone beyond this planet. To what degree? I don't know. But this is exactly what I wanted to try and dodge! It was all caused because of that damn zombie robot!
What? Zombie robot? Don't you mean Folly or someone else?
Yes, I'm referring to Foley. He bumped into me and he wanted me to find those crystals alongside me, and he got one.
Let me guess, he went on a power trip?
But then when I went to his base, it didn't exactly feel right. He just wasn't giving the same kind of feeling as you did. I was barely able to escape using that money clone technique you saw earlier.
Typical for mindless, malicious buffoons like him. Though, if it's my guess, he must have tried to spread the word to others. That makes me wonder, how did you do that money clone thing?
Oh, that's something I completely figured out with the staff. If I stand completely still and allow it to happen, I can fake my position and go anywhere within a quarter of a mile as long as it's not seen or touched.
Interesting. It would seem that your staff has more capabilities than what initially meets the eye.
Though strangely enough, it only reacts to me, to the point where if someone else touches it, they get an electric shock. And yes, that has saved me before.
It must be some sort of a chosen one artifact? I see a strange amount of those. Where'd you first find it?
Well, it goes a few months back. Junichiro then sat down, got comfortable, and explained his history, with how he found the staff, and how he found that weird orb whose origin he didn't even know. After hearing everything, Shep stepped back.
Wait. So, just let me summarize this. So one day you go to this corner shop place, only to find out it's been replaced by some freakish eldritch super tall angled dark building, and then that's where you found your hat and staff. You were confronted by unknown creatures, to your world at least, using bear suits, and then the building just vanished the moment you left it?
Exactly.
Surprisingly, that isn't the weirdest thing I've heard all year.
Yeah, I'm not exactly surprised of how bonkers this planet is.
True. By the way, I wanted to discuss something regarding our current alliance. Would you consider joining the Bastion, what with observing the universe and preserving the artifacts throughout it?
Oh, me? I'd love to. But there's a caveat to it. Think about it. After that letter was sent, there's a good chance that I'm on a lot of people's blacklists now. If I was alerted by a random ranger from space, then who knows how much further it goes. So I'd love to join you. On one condition. Before Junichiro can finish, Shep interrupts him.
Well, here's an idea. What if you could just disappear?
Actually, that was my original goal. Allow me to elaborate on that. So what I'm getting from this is when someone joins the Bastion, they're essentially removed from the outside world to ensure that no distractions get in the way of your mission. Right? The way I was thinking about it was, I was intending to come here, get everything that was cloned, disappear, and then hide it on my home planet so it's not in consideration. And if anyone does remember, it just gets chalked down as a crackpot mystery. You can see how I bugger that up.
Well, from my perspective, their identity is erased. People that knew them are forced into forgetting them. All the personal belongings are taken and given back to him to store away in their personal quarters at the HQ. But they're not completely forgotten. We don't just preserve artifacts, you see.
Go on.
Allow me.
He then pulled a lever on his main computer table, assuming that he'd reached his private engineering room, as a giant screen slowly started coming out of the wall opposite to the entrance.
Behold the Bastion's database, the ultimate collection and catalog of identities and life forms universe-wide.
Junichiro's eyes widened. Holy crap!
I know, right? But back to what I was saying. This is how we document every life form in the observable universe, from happy-go-lucky heroes to the darkest of villains and everything in between. We've even managed to document evidence of gods.
I wasn't expecting it to go that deep.
Trust me, I've been in this business for a long time. We're working on options for categories, but for now we simply have a list specialized for Bastion operators. My main point in telling you about this is that you've told me your plan all along was to simply preserve these powerful artifacts in the world and then boom, vanish. The same goal as us. So, therefore, I think you fit right at home. So, what do you say?
I'm gonna be honest, it takes a lot to win my trust because I have been double-crossed many times before, and even double-crossed others a couple times. And for me, I have to be shown a certain amount to be convinced what I'm witnessing isn't just a facade. But you know what? After seeing all of this, Junichiro then took off the bag that usually rested on his back, fastened the loop over the table, and poured almost everything on it, revealing swords, orbs, gems, crystals, and 2 out of 7 of those emeralds. I'm in! Shep's eyes widened in almost complete disbelief.
Amazing. Yeah, I'd say you're in for sure. I'd be glad to have someone with your level of wits on the team.
Junichiro seemed delighted that he was finally with some like-minded people, but he added something. There's just one caveat though. Because of that bounty that was sent to everyone, I can't continue as Junichiro. I have to completely change my identity. Which seems kind of tricky considering, you know, all of this. Look at me, I'm pretty distinct. So, do you have anything that could make me, like, completely change my appearance?
No, don't worry. Considering the amount of artifacts we've already been able to preserve, as well as the operatives we've already got on board, it's pretty much a shoo-in that we'll be able to completely change your identity too. Of course, if you want to stick around the same theme you have now, I feel like that worked pretty well.
While all this was happening, there was some strange clicking sounds coming from around the corner, but no one paid them any attention as they were too deep in the conversation. Acid was dripping behind them from the corner, but still, no one had noticed. Just in case anyone connects the dots in some way, I want to change my name. Let me think of something. Junichiro then thought of something that had the same ring, but was just different enough for people to be thrown off if they ever came here. How about Jungoro? That has a pretty good ring to it.
I mean, alright, that works.
Chapter 14, Security Breach. It's settled then! Junichiro is no more! Look out world, for Jungoro has a new purpose in life! Both of them were startled by a sound on the ship, and immediately looked back. But there was nothing there. Jungoro was immediately caught off guard and braced for some sort of impact. What the hell was that sound? Both of them looked in every direction they could. No results looking forward, no results looking downward or backwards. But then they get the idea to look upwards as they saw Doug. Shit! How did he get into the base? Doug landed on the ground, stretching out both of his claws.
You... How did you find your way in? That should have been impossible. This place is invisible to the naked eye. We have no choice. We have to terminate this thing.
On it! Jungoro used a strategy that had been used multiple times before, swinging his staff to create a lasso. However, Doug was too large of a figure, and it didn't go all the way. Damn it, it's not far enough! Doug charged towards Jungoro as he tried to dash backwards, but because the rope was still stuck on Doug, it was jamming the staff. It's jammed! I can't move! Shep jumped in front of the rope, morphing his left hand into a futuristic Gatling gun, firing hard rounds of light into the rope and into Doug. Jungoro was forced into a position where he had to take the blow at full impact, but the question was whether Doug could power through the hits. Doug couldn't get through the hits and was forced to go onto the roof and climb towards Shep. Jungoro was briefly lifted into the air, but he was able to cut the cord between them. Shep was still firing, readying his other arm with a fist just in case he had to punch it back, as Jungoro landed on the ground. Close call, but you aren't deterring me just yet. Now, I've got a plan. Hold off Doug for now! Jungoro then took off into the distance to ready something as Shep had to fight off Doug single-handedly. While Jungoro was around a corner, Doug dived into Shep, who punched it straight in the mouth. It started to spit acid everywhere. Shep hovered into the air to avoid the acid spit for the most part as Doug ripped out one of his eyeballs and threw it at Shep.
What is this supposed to be?
And then while he was confused, Doug lunged forward again at Shep, causing for a full impact blow.
Oh, you motherfucker!
He threw Doug's eyeball back at him and then jumped into the air to try and avoid it. Doug then cleanly caught his eye and put it back in.
Hey, Jungoro, if whatever you're planning, now's a damn good time to use it.
I'm trying, but it needs another minute! Doug flew back and rapidly whipped out a chameleon-like tongue, trying to stretch out and grab Shep. Shep switched his hands to ion cutters and frantically swung like a maniac to ensure that if Doug did catch him with the tongue, it wouldn't end well for him. Doug saw this and instead spit acid around him. Shep then ran over to Doug and suplexed him directly into the floor, apparently deciding to not give a damn about the acid.
Hey, what the hell are you waiting for? Do the thing already!
I'm waiting for a clear shot! Try to toss him into the hallway! Shep grabbed Doug, frantically swung him around, and added more momentum with every single turnaround. Alright, just stay away from it yourself! Doug was then tossed into the hallway. He tried to lunge back, but just before he could, a giant claw made out of money grabbed onto his tail. Remember when you tried to do this to me? Now it's your turn. Jungoro then pulled a lever, making him fling away. Immediately after this happened, Jungoro tried to run back to Shep. It took Shep a moment to realize what he'd made, but when Doug flung through the hallway and then went back into the air again, with the claw still attached, it became clear. Jungoro had made a device with an extendable claw that had a base that could spin over itself 100 times, slamming whatever it grabbed onto the ground and ceiling multiple times over.
Some kind of grappling hook. I like it.
The rotation slammed Doug for another 2 minutes, with Doug appearing more and more battered each time it circled around. Eventually, the connection of the claw severed, but Doug was still alive, albeit temporarily immobile. Damn, not even that worked? Jungoro then thought about how he could now finish off the immobilized beast. Strong son of a bitch! Junichiro then had an idea. He looked at his staff, and he knew what he had to do. He snapped it in half, chucking the first half of it into his mouth. Doug, before he could even realize what was happening, was then forced through tons of electric shocks, slowly rattling and deforming the beast, second by second, until eventually his eyes dimmed and his movements stopped. Jungoro walked up to the wreckage to see if he could retrieve the staff, but he wasn't able to connect it back on. God damn it! I knew I should have waited on your word! Then, while he was angrily shaking the staff, the back half of it still shot some money. Wait, hang on.
What are you thinking?
I have an idea. If you were to try and interact with it, it would still shock you. But you saw that this end can still fire out money. So what if, and hear me out, we make a contraption that can still get this to consistently fire?
Like a blaster casing where if I pull the trigger, it vibrates the staff?
I doubt that would be impossible considering all the resources here. It sounds like an idea to me. You up for that?
We're gonna need to put this staff to the artifact database anyways, so might as well make use of it.
Alright, let's see if we can pull this off. And then from that moment onwards, Junichiro was no more. This is Jungoro. After finding out about the Bastion, the previously Lone Ranger Junichiro found a group of people that followed his own ambitions, and it turns out that they've done far more progress than he was ever able to. Not to discredit the amount he'd already found, of course. He decided, after joining the Bastion, to completely change his name and appearance, while still sticking to the style he was used to. The most notable appearance changes were that he now wears a jade cape that flown with the wind. His torso was also replaced from solid gold to a much more resistant emerald. And most importantly, after his previous golden staff had been snapped in half to save his skin in battle, he was able to retool it into a blaster. With the push of a button, he was able to send aggressive vibrations to the severed half of the staff, allowing him to shoot out money at a rapid pace. It also had 2 different levers on it, one allowing him to shoot them in clusters that break on impact, and another one of them twisting into rolls with 2 ends rather than 4, which can be as sharp as a knife. He can still do the money clone trick he learned from the staff. However, there are some things he's not able to do after losing that side of his weapon. Mainly, gliding in the air is far trickier, and making walls for blind spots is almost impossible. However, this is also made up by him being able to create nets with one end of the string to another far quicker than he used to, making him better at laying traps. And finally, his personality also had a bit of a touch. He used to be an even mix of determination with a little bit of cockiness. And now he has the personality of shoot first, ask questions later, not refraining from acting on impulse. With these changes, he was made into a much better fit for the Bastion, and he was also a very personal close friend of Shep's as well, with him eventually being able to become second in command. If you see Junichiro staring at you funny, you might want to reconsider what got you there in the first place. And finally, after Junichiro is practicing with his weapons for a bit, we return to the portal. Chapter 15. The Portal. It was a few days after Junichiro had joined the Bastion. He was mostly spending some time getting used to his new blaster, as coming from a massive staff to a tiny blaster was a bit of an odd shift. He was mainly experimenting with a dial on the side of the blaster, where if he slid it in different positions, the money would do different things. For example, if he pulled it all the way back, they would all be connected together, letting him grapple up and make ropes way easier. If he flicked it all the way forward, they would all be detached and fire quicker, making them work more effectively as projectiles. But then, Junichiro found that if he slid it in the middle of both of those positions, it shot out as a ball that could be used as a pretty heavy projectile. He did it, it landed in his hand, and he chucked it behind him. I wonder how many more things this switch can do. He then heard a large thudding sound where he'd thrown the ball, which had knocked over something. But before he could look over his shoulder and glance at it, Shep came over, wanting to talk to him.
Hey, Junichiro. We recently got a member back, and I think you'd like to meet him.
In that moment, Junichiro looked back and noticed a portal where the door had gone down. He was really confused because he could recall all of the other portals not working. His focus was split between both Shep and the portal. What the hell? Alright, show me. Shep would then click his fingers and point at someone.
What? Hold on, let me save this.
Junichiro would then get his first proper glimpse at Cypress. Cypress was an old friend of Shep who had been in the organization for a while, but he'd only just recently been recovered. Cypress was about as tall as Shep, but he always donned a pair of headphones, and his head was made out of a glass dome. Cypress initially wouldn't see Junichiro, mainly because Junichiro's species was naturally really, really short, and Junichiro was only about 2'11". Comparatively, Cypress was 9'4". After a little bit of confused looking, Cypress would then look down and notice Junichiro. Wait, how did he end up here? From what I've seen so far, not many new faces show up.
He came back recently after a fight with a giant robot. And to think I thought he died.
Seems like a bit of a tough nut to crack. Wait, hang on. At that moment, Junichiro saw something come out of the portal. He didn't exactly know what it was, but there was this overly ominous aura behind it. Is that supposed to happen? However, Cypress hadn't yet noticed.
The name is Cypress. I work as a musician, mostly.
Now, his head may have been a glass dome, but that didn't mean that it was entirely stable, as there was a crack right through the middle of it. At this point, Cypress would finally see the portal, and he would poke Shep to give him a gesture.
Go on then, Shep. You know what to do.
Shep would then send out a drone to try and look through the portal. And when the drone came back, what it reported on was startling. It would turn around, revealing an LED screen, which would light up, saying,
"Wanted body shot. It looked like him."
And it would then move towards Junichiro. Oh shit! The three of them immediately ran through the portal, and Junichiro immediately noticed something off as he saw the corpse of one of his kind with a gold cap and with 4 distinctly triangle marks going through straight into his skull. What? How is that possible? Somebody was here, and I'm not talking about the corpse. Junichiro looked down and then noticed something. Hold on. It's a letter. Junichiro then opened it and started to read it off to everyone else. To whoever enters this portal, I am not safe. I don't know who you are, and I don't know who will step through the portal, but I and the rest of my group need help. Serious help.
Jesus, too late then.
Not too long ago, I was part of a group that would find whatever they could that threatened this world and keep them hidden away. This is already setting off some big alarm bells.
Oh my
Right.
God.
Over the past day or so, the group of 5 had slowly begun disappearing, likely due to someone who disappeared off of our radar years ago. He didn't exactly have a name, or at least one that he didn't tell us, but we know exactly what he looked like. He was in a black suit, had a sinister-looking mustache, had a red bow tie, and a black top hat.
I wonder if that's the guy who killed, well, this guy over here.
Right. Just a few hours ago, there was only 2 of us left. Me and the leader, Junichiro! What? Junichiro was absolutely taken aback by his original name being marked on the paper. Junichiro continued reading. I wasn't able to go in and help him. He just so happened to be hiding within this closet for weeks, waiting for a moment where he was alone. That's where the letter ends! There's no more writing on this! Did he not even have enough time to finish writing this? Everyone starts to get concerned, and we're starting to think about if they should just go back and pretend like they didn't see anything.
Do you guys think we should go back home before anything gets seriously messed up?
Look, Shep, I think we're in a little bit too deep. Just leave this as blank.
What if this world has powers that we don't even know, that we have to lock away?
Yeah, to be fair, I did sort of forget about my mission at that part. So, what the hell? Let's just keep searching around this weird place and hope something turns up.
Almost immediately after stepping out of the room, Cypress noticed something.
Hey, look at that. Is this some sort of display?
And the display showcased the remnants of the tracking device's map, which showed that someone was heading back to somewhere, and then backtracked, assumedly being the person who killed the guy with the golden cap. Right, fuck, so that means I couldn't have gone that far if someone had to press a button to activate it. So, Shep, you watch behind me as I enter this room. I can probably handle this. Junichiro then walked into a room and saw something that took him aback. My staff? And it's not broken. He tried to pick it up, but then he got a taste of reality. I didn't think he'd... son of a bitch, this isn't the same one.
Well, I suppose if that shocked you, then this must be some sort of alternate universe, most likely. I mean, that's what it said on the letter.
Chapter 16. Denial's Wrath. Junichiro heard something very faint. What was that? He then ran to the nearest window and saw some movement. I don't know what, but there's something in that bush, and I am not looking at what's there alone.
Me neither. What's it called? Do you think we should rush it? Or just shoot it or something? I don't know.
Oh yeah, forgot I had a blaster. Stupid. Junichiro aimed his gun out of the window and fired it, expecting something to be hit. He fired about 5 or 6 shots, but then the money that hit the bush with surgical precision all reflected back at him at the same time, puncturing through his leg and immobilizing him. That's son of a bitch, what the hell was that? Shep was also completely taken aback by this, but he noticed an arm stretching over the windowsill. It pulled itself up, and then he got a visual on what it was. It was another person that looked like Junichiro. This one had an extremely stern expression and was holding a sign that he also carried as a weapon with 4 spikes over each shoulder. Notably, the scientist who activated the portal had 4 spike marks directly through his skull. Junichiro, now near immobilized, tried to crawl away. No, Shep, do something! Shep would then immediately place down a holographic shield, spanning the height and width of the room. But then the figure simply walked forward, threw the sign like a boomerang, and when it hit the shield, it flipped and shielded him. He now walked forward with extra protection. The shield was deactivated by Shep himself. The unknown figure then started charging towards Shep as he was focusing on bringing down the shield. Shep tried to gut punch him to push him backwards, but the figure never swung. He instead held the sign to his chest, anticipating a strike like that, and that caused Shep to fly into a wall. It was at this moment that Cypress walked in and noticed everything that was happening. He then charged towards the figure with the spike pauldrons and uppercutted him. It stunned him in place, but it didn't lift him up. The figure then looked at Cypress with an evil glare in his eyes and then swung the sign at him. Cypress recoiled back a bit, but then changed direction and roundhouse kicked the figure. In response to both of these, he slightly shifted back and moved his shoulders so that they both end up running into the spikes. However, he didn't anticipate that Shep recovered off the wall and did a leg sweep. Junichiro had only just recovered to his senses, so while the figure was getting back up, he switched to the blaster and went into ball mode, and fired it at his head, knocking the sign straight out of his hands.
Yeah, that'll teach you, you reflecting little prick.
But the figure still had one more trick up his sleeve. It was clear that he wasn't going to win a fight against 3, but in response to this, he threw the sign to the floor and then jumped into its spikes first. This ended up impaling the figure and knocking him out. Junichiro was seemingly puzzled as to why he would just commit suicide like that. Psh, what's that gonna do? All of a sudden, his chest was burst through by 4 invisible spikes, sending him into a state of shock and knocking him out. It was unclear if this killed him. Son of the...
Oh, fuck. Get the spikes off that guy and put the sign somewhere he won't find it. I'm gonna try and protect Junichiro.
Shep then formulated a pretty on-the-nose replica of Medical Gaze, quickly bandaging up Junichiro's present wounds, but he wasn't waking up.
Shit, this is bad.
Cypress then went to check on his pulse. But just then... Chapter 17. Fandango. There was a suspicious knock at the door, immediately catching Shep's attention. What he saw alarmed him. It was a figure that looked similar to the dark figure they'd just taken out, but this time with a top hat, eye patch, mustache, suit, and a red-eyed glare. Shep then burst open the door.
Who are you, and who do you work for?
The figure responded,
Oh, me? Let's just say I'm collecting some debt.
Shep aimed an arm cannon out and fired it at the figure, seemingly immobilizing his leg.
Shit.
Shep crouched through the doorframe as this tall figure became more and more menacing by the second. He would then approach the top-hatted individual.
Well, maybe you should have started reconsidering being a debtor or whatever the hell that was you meant about collecting debt. Now explain immediately what your business is and be straight up. No fancy monikers or rhetorics, alright?
But then, the moment Shep stepped out of the door, his leg got stuck. The small figure then looked up and smirked.
Are you crossing the street?
Shep looked down and saw one of the laminators hidden in the ground, completely immobilizing his leg. The tone immediately shifted as the figure started walking towards Shep without losing a single shred of confidence.
Gotta look both ways, my friend.
I thought it was Mind the Gap.
The name's... Actually, yeah. That wouldn't be more clever. Regardless, you don't have to ask for my name. Just call me Fandango. Let's just say that you got in the way of one of my plans. I was expecting someone to head out of the portal, and I was alerted by that tracking device about a couple of hours ago. And if you read that, You probably know what happens next.
He then cockily walked up to Shep's back and looked over his shoulder to see Jungoro's corpse with 4 spike marks.
He caught one. Not too shabby.
Yeah, living tropes or something about you having a suffocation fetish or some shit.
What? No. Don't get it confused. It's just more efficient.
Also, who the hell's that Spike guy? He nearly killed us.
Oh, that's just someone whom I made from the ground up to kill everyone who got in my way. I couldn't come up with a clever name for him, though, so I just called him Denial, and I think you can see why. That sign was just something I stole. That Junichiro guy, he is or was obsessed with keeping things away from the public. I was chasing him for years, but I hid myself away from him for the longest time so he would eventually forget about me. And I spent all that time figuring out what would be the best for keeping people still alive, but out of general combat because I'm not the best at killing. And I think you can probably tell what I settled on.
Shep then starts to think to himself.
Oh, this guy. Pretentious fools like him really just piss me off. No individual power, having to rely on tricks and schemes. Repulsive!
But when he eventually did respond, he took it a lot more in stride.
No shit. Now can you, get this stupid thing off my leg?
He looked at him with a shit-eating grin, and a string came out from atop a building.
I think you know what happens next.
He slowly started walking away, gripping the string in his hand as it slowly revealed something. However, it didn't look like a laminator.
You probably thought I picked them because... What was it again now? Right, because of a suffocation fetish of some sort. Bold of you to think that, considering our species doesn't even have lungs. But either way, I just tend to use whatever's most efficient.
I'm not gonna lie, you guys have some really weird anatomies, but beyond that, Jesus Christ, you're fucked up.
He pulled it really hard, and all of a sudden, a bag flew out from the ceiling. This bag had the exact same appearance as the one that Jungoro used to have.
Yeah, it's mine now, bitch.
He was quick to realize that this guy, Fandango, was looking for power.
He's a threat. Alright, I'm done talking. You've taken this too far for too long.
Jep then proceeded to rip off his leg, soon enough generating a leg made out of hard light, and he started sprinting towards Fandango, who then pulled out a book. The same book he tried to take from Junichiro years ago, and it launched out a lightning bolt which struck Shep in the chest. Shep immediately started charging for the bag and tanked the lightning bolt. But all of a sudden, he started to slow down.
You think I don't know what's in this bag, considering how much research I've done into it? Well, I've seen this lovely little book I'm holding here before, and I just so happen to know what it does. And you know what it does? Anything it hits with that lightning bolt starts to move slower and slower and slower. And after a minute, it completely freezes. But its mind doesn't.
Shep was now completely frozen, and he could only muster up words of fear.
This power of unknown capacity, it doesn't belong to you, and it'll ruin you soon.
What will I use this for now? Ah, yes, a statue just outside the garden. I was looking for something to spruce it up.
Oh, you bitch!
Don't even try it, Pipsqueak.
With a flash, both he and Shep completely disappeared, leaving Cypress as the only one there. Cypress, filled with complete rage, went back into the house to see if he could get any hints. He then heard something from another room. How am I alive? What happened? Cypress was immediately waved with a massive streak of relief.
Jungoro, thank God you're alive. Now, okay, so Shep was forcibly teleported away by some person in a red suit. Now, I don't know how, but for...
Just as fast as it came around, he then collapsed again, completely passing out from the pain of the 4 invisible spikes blasting their way through his chest.
Damn it, damn it, damn it!
Chapter 18. It It's all coming together. What happened to Shep? A few minutes passed, and he, in his completely frozen state, still within the confines of Fandango's garden, noticed Fandango coming out of the door with a golden block containing Junichiro frozen in it.
You may be wondering why I brought myself back to you, 7 minutes later?
Oh, what, you had to taunt me because you know how to use a magic wand? Please enlighten me.
Let me tell you something. I have been looking for this particular little gadget for years. There was a lot of stuff I didn't really care about in here. I didn't really need it, so I laminated all of that into this piece as well.
He held up another piece of laminated paper that was an amalgamation of all sorts of crystals, gems, and weapons that was blinding to directly look at.
I don't know what they do, and I don't care.
He tossed them into a nearby wood chipper, which exploded, destroying every last shred of it. This specifically plucked at Shep's nerves, but he couldn't release any of it because he was still frozen. He held up what looked like an unassuming switch and flicked it. Just at that moment, there was a flash which blinded everyone's vision for a few seconds. Even Cypress, who was miles away, noticed it and saw it was a flag for where to go. When their vision came back, both Shep and Junichiro saw a massive beacon.
But this right here is the real deal. See that beacon? It's what I've wanted to activate for years. In 10 minutes, this beacon will line up with this nearby planet and explode.
He pointed into the sky at a bright green planet that wasn't too far away.
And you know what it does? It freezes everything, and I mean everything, in place. And unlike that perpetual state you're in, even if I die, it's permanent.
Well, if the explosion you're talking about is that all-encompassing, wouldn't it also freeze you as well? You fucking idiot.
It applies to everyone except who flicked the switch.
Oh.
You hear me? I will replace this entire planet to match up with my image, and anyone who has lived here will have to watch in terror as they watch everything they know vanish, replaced with only a memorial of me. Oh, yeah. And Junichiro, let's put you back in your rightful place at the throne room. It's funnier to leave you with the suspense. You won't be smiling when I'm done with you, even if you wanted to.
He then walked into his house, but before he did, he looked at Shep. He then whipped out a physical camera and took a picture, getting a small image of it as a memorial.
Oh, I want to save you this moment later on in life, so that I can look back at a time when I didn't have everything. Wait, why is Shep's face blurry? Weird. Not to worry, though. I can still probably fix it later.
A few minutes later, Fandango would come back, this time without Junichiro. He would then take out a lawn chair and sit down.
Oh, Shep, during this wait, you've really stuck out to me, and you've garnered my undivided attention. And you know what I want your last living memories of a living organism with free will to be? Me. So I'm gonna sit here for the next 5 minutes, and the moment everything flashes, I'll pack everything up, and my godly stroll in this now living picture frame shall begin.
Shep wasn't even responding anymore, as a last Hail Mary to try and rob him of the ever so slight satisfaction he'd get from it. This didn't work, however.
Oh, not going to muster up any words? I finally broke you. I'm surprised it didn't take that long.
Chapter 19. Deep Freeze. A sudden swooshing sound filled the air.
Oh, normally I defend this place with my life, but yours doesn't have much time left. Come here.
With only 5 minutes remaining, Cypress slammed down in front of Fandango and glared at him with intense anger.
I thought I reached my limit when I entered the portal, but you keep finding new ways to push it further.
He leaped into the air and dived towards Fandango, aiming to break his chest. Just before the impact, Fandango pulled out the denial sign.
You fool!
He shouted.
You've landed right on
He flipped the sign, expecting it to be the same one that had crippled Jungoro. However, he didn't pay attention to one crucial detail. If anyone other than Denial held the sign, it would become a verified sign. And this verified sign wouldn't just reflect any of the damage, it would double it and undo the reflecting property, only affecting the person holding the sign. Instead of being merely pushed back, Fandango was split in two. He then laid there in excruciating pain as Shep slowly began to move, with less than 4 minutes until the world froze.
You know something. I'll cherish these last moments, because I've already won. There's no way to turn off the beam, not even if I wanted to turn it off. But you should embrace it. You all should. After all, who doesn't want to live forever?
His head slumps onto the ground, indicating that this unholy threat had finally been neutralized. Shep, now able to move freely, flipped Fandango off. They had no time for anger, though, as they only had just under 4 minutes to get home. But they couldn't leave empty-handed. They had to save Junichiro.
Okay, fuck. Junichiro, save him now.
They burst through the doors and found Junichiro after a brief search. Cypress dismantled it from the wall, but then a speaker emerged from the roof, playing a pre-recorded message.
Who doesn't want to live forever?
With that, hundreds of flashbangs and smoke grenades filled the room. Shep, who hadn't touched the frame, could shut the door and avoid the blast. But because Cypress went all the way to dismantling the frame, he had no way of getting there.
God, fuck!
His senses were overwhelmed by the explosion, which he took at full impact. Afterwards, Shep had to run in, grab both Cypress and the gold bar, and make a dash while handling them himself. As they were running down the streets back to their cabin, Shep would look back at the house, and then look back up at the beam, and then back at the house and back at the beam, wondering if they calculated this right, and if they even had enough time to breathe on the portal home. When they burst through the door, there was less than a minute left, unbeknownst to them. Shep would then approach to Jungoro, grab him by the arm, put him towards his head, and then yell directly at him to try and wake him up and make sure he was alive.
Wake up!
Jungoro would wake up and break out of Shep's grip. What? Okay, where's the portal? Shep would then grab Jungoro by the hand and run towards the doorway. With only 25 seconds left, Shep couldn't actually fit through the small doorway, so he had to punch a hole through the top, giving them only 10 seconds to work with. After finally breaking through the door, Shep would then grab a hold of everyone in the crew, Jungoro, Cypress, and then potentially Junichiro, throwing them over the portal. But the second he grabbed on Junichiro, with only 7 seconds left, Denial appeared, dazed but determined. He grabbed the other end of the gold bar, trying to pull it away as much as possible to ensure that Junichiro was taken as well as Shep. Only 5 seconds remained as Shep and Denial would fight each other in this one-sided tug-of-war where Denial was only trying to stall for time. With every step closer, Shep could then hear the sounds of the beam getting more and more audible. 5, 4, 3, 2... With only 2 seconds to go, he got his first leg through the door and tried one final push through. And with 1 second left to go, he shut the gold bar over the portal as time stood still. Shep had about 2/3 of his body through the portal the moment it froze, and this ended up decapitating his 2 other legs, which again, he replaced with hard light rounds the moment he could. Denial wasn't so fortunate, however, as the only part that got over was his head, decapitating him the second the world froze, and leading to his head for the final moments of conscience, rolling down the corridor, watching everyone else, looking directly at his unfiltered gaze. Chapter 20. Time. Everyone had somehow survived. Jungoro was in excruciating pain from the spikes, but managed to stand up and uttered a simple before collapsing once again. Cypress had lost his sense of sight and started questioning his own existence.
Are we even alive? I honestly can't tell.
It would wear off about 10 minutes later. Shep, although mostly unscathed, still needed a moment to collect his thoughts.
Hey, give me a moment. I just need a second, real quick. Just a moment.
After a few minutes, Shep focused his attention on the block of gold, which only had a small nick in it from the freezing cut. A machine unsealed it, and for the first time in hours, Junichiro regained his sight. What happened? He asked. Where am I?
No, you woke up faster than I thought. To make a long story short, my name's Shep, and we rescued you. An evil guy with a black top hat froze the entire world in time. I mean, literally froze it.
What? Junichiro exclaimed. Are you telling me that my entire race is essentially dead?
Well, not entirely.
Shep said.
There's one other of you, but that's classified information.
Of course, the one person who's still alive is classified data, Junichiro muttered. So, it's basically extinct, you're saying?
Unfortunately, yes.
Fuck. My whole purpose in life was to find as many things as I could, to hoard them, and keep this world safe. And yet I unintentionally killed everyone. I'm a fucking failure!
Wait.
Shep interrupted.
You said your goal was to preserve stuff, right?
Yeah? What about it?
That's the entire reason we formed this organization. I suppose you've been successful at it?
Well, until I was frozen, yes, Junichiro replied. We gathered quite a lot of artifacts and supernatural trinkets from multiple different worlds. Wait, with a realization dawning on him. I could be done with this. Oh my god, there's someone else in this world who's actually doing what I wanted to. Better than how I was doing it. Fuck, there's a lot I have to reconsider now.
Well, I don't think you should spend too much time thinking about it. The Bastion is a secret organization. Since you know we exist, we unfortunately have to erase your memories.
Junichiro was surprised by the news, but remained calm. So you're telling me that I can essentially be done with this? You can reset my brain to a certain point?
Yeah, that's what we normally do.
Okay. Wait. Don't just reset it to before I knew about you. Reset it to a point before I even knew about the distant planet with everything cloned. And plant in some fake memories just to make sure.
Are you looking for retirement or something?
I wouldn't call it retirement. I just want to make sure that I do something else and don't accidentally discover you guys again after doing a terrible job of protecting everything.
That's a lot more thought-provoking than I expected. Just follow me for a second.
Shep then led Junichiro to an operating table.
Just take a seat and let the machine do the rest.
Junichiro sat down and said one last thing. You know, I'm gonna miss the preservation job I used to have. But at least I know, in the moment where it matters most, the job's already been done.
Rest well, Junichiro. It's well deserved.
And with that, Junichiro closed his eyes. Epilogue. A few hours later, he wakes up in the calm countryside. Oh wow, I didn't think the staff could have knocked me unconscious. Don't know how I ended up on this hill either. Marksville's just down the road, so I'd have to go out of my way to be here. Junichiro didn't know how long he was knocked out for, but he wasn't going to question it any more than a simple ponder, considering that he might as well go back home and tell everyone what he just found. Because if you found something as crazy as a staff that can summon money, maybe it could lead you to some crazy adventures in the future. But you'll never know unless you go out there and find out. Let's recall something that Shep said earlier in this book. They say a man only truly dies when his name is uttered the last time. If that's any metric to go by, then Junichiro is as good as dead. Junichiro was never seen again. And eventually, history forgot his name. So if you're wondering why I'm talking now, it's because I gave the opportunity for anyone in the credits to leave like a custom sound or custom voice line for when their name comes up, and only a couple of people did it, but you'll hear a little notification noise when it comes up. But either way, making this, considering everything I had to balance with running the project, is hopefully the closest thing I will ever get to childbirth. 99% excruciating pain, but the joy I felt at the end was hopefully worth it. Hopefully, because I don't know if the algorithm is still going to be favoring me when this comes out. Trust me, trying to stall it until this releases to make sure this doesn't become the Encore project has been hell. But hopefully I made it all worth it. Hopefully.
Hi guys, it's me, Nuke Booters, on YouTube and Spotify.
Is there a fucking toucan? No, not the non-fuckable toucan.
Hello, I was the bounty hunter. I need to read something out. Give me 1 sec. Fungi Crossing is a 2D puzzle platformer game about navigating a group of two-legged mushrooms with plunger-like feet through the hostile terrains of the post-apocalyptic Earth. The player controls the fungi by dragging their feet with the mouse and using them to stick to walls and to other fungi. The fungi will travel alongside Terrans, a former astronaut who alongside the fungi is trying to survive this hostile new Earth. Search Fungi Crossing in YouTube for more information. Okay, thanks. Play Fungi Crossing.
Hey everyone, this is Miss Characters here. I don't really know much about the characters that I voiced for this project, but I will say this. Link's Nair is a frame 7 aerial that is -2 on shield. The hard hit of Nair is active on frame 7 and 8, and the soft hit of Nair lasts for the rest of the attack until frame 31. It's Link's best neutral tool, as it can be used to clank with projectiles, generate safe shield pressure, walk your dog, file your taxes, and most importantly, win you the Pikachu matchup. It's also really great for advantage, and an easy way to ledge trap your opponent. Speaking of ledge trapping, Link's bomb can be dropped at the ledge and will bounce 4 times as an active hitbox, which will come.
And if you want, because there are going to be credits, you can have like a special voice line play when your name appears in the credits, so say anything.
Oh, Fernando Alonso! Oh, Fernando Alonso! Oh, Franco Colapinto! Oh, Fernando!
I am so proud of you.